Most people walking down Roosevelt Avenue in Queens tonight have no idea how close New York once came to another disaster. They see the restaurants, they hear the music, they catch the train. Life feels completely normal. But in 2009, federal investigators believed a man connected to this city was prepping something terrifying. Not a robbery, not a shooting, something much bigger. A plan to bomb the New York City subway system during rush hour. And for a short moment in time, authorities believed the attack could happen at any day. To understand how serious it was, you have to start with the man at the center of the story. His name was Najibullah Zazi. At first glance, Zazi looked completely ordinary. He worked as an airport shuttle driver. He rented apartments. He blended into everyday American life the way the millions of people do. The kind of person nobody would look twice at while walking down a street like Roosevelt Avenue. And that was exactly what made investigators uneasy, because behind the ordinary lives, something else had been happening. In 2008, Zazi made a trip overseas. He traveled to Pakistan. And according to US prosecutors, that trip changed everything. Authorities later said he made contact with members of Al-Qaeda. Investigators believed he received training there. Not military training, explosive training. The kind of design for people who plan attacks inside major cities. Training on how to construct powerful homemade bombs. Bombs that could be hidden inside backpacks. Bombs that could be carried onto trains. Bombs designed to detonate in crowded places. Now imagine the scale of that threat for a moment. New York City has one of the busiest subway systems in the world. Every weekday, millions of people ride the trains. Crowded platforms, packed subway cars, commuters shoulder to shoulder. And lines like the 7 trains, the one running above Roosevelt Avenue, carry thousands of people every hour between Queens and Manhattan. An attack inside that system could cause devastating chaos. Which is why the subway network has always been considered a major security concern. But at first, nobody knew exactly what Zazi planned. That changed when intelligence agencies began monitoring communications connected to extremist networks overseas. Certain names began appearing. Certain emails raised red flags. Eventually, those signals led investigators to Zazi. Once he returned to the United States, federal agents quietly began watching him. They monitored his communications. They tracked his movements. They looked into his contacts. At that point, investigators still did not know the full plan. But they knew something was wrong. Then the situation escalated. Agents discovered that Zazi had started buying chemicals. Not one chemical, several. And not a single purchase. He bought them slowly, from different stores, on different days, trying not to attract attention. But the combination of chemicals he was collecting had one disturbing purpose. They could be used to manufacture explosives. And once investigators realized what he might be doing, the case suddenly became urgent. Because he was building bombs, the next question was obvious. Where would he use them? Then something even more alarming happened. In September 2009, Zazi suddenly got into his car and began driving east, from Colorado towards New York. Federal investigators immediately took notice. They believed he might be returning to the city to carry out the attack. Imagine being one of the agents following this situation in real time. A suspect trained overseas, a man purchasing bomb-making chemicals, now driving across the country towards one of the most densely populated cities in the world. And nobody knew exactly where the attack might happen. The FBI began coordinating with the New York Police Department, and multiple agencies became involved. The problem was timing. Authorities needed enough evidence to stop the plot. But they also needed to move before anyone got hurt. If they arrested him too early, they might miss important information about the other people involved. If they waited too long, the consequences could be catastrophic. So investigators watched everything, phone calls, emails, movements. They followed its route. They listened carefully for any sign that the attack was about to happen. And for several tense days, federal agents believed the threat was extremely real. Eventually, investigators found what they needed: evidence that linked Zazi directly to a plan targeting the subway system. Authorities moved in. He was arrested, and later Zazi pled guilty to terrorism charges. He admitted that he had been planning to carry out a suicide bombing targeting a New York subway. Prosecutors said the attack could have caused massive casualties. And according to investigators, the plot was one of the most serious threats to New York since the attack of September 11th. The part that still unsettles many people is how close the situation might have come to becoming reality. The suspect had the training, he had the materials, and he had the target. And he was already heading back towards New York. Which means that somewhere in the timeline of this city, there was a moment when millions of commuters had no idea how close they were to becoming part of a tragedy. And the strange thing about cities like New York is how quickly life moves on. The trains keep running, the streets stay crowded, and places like Roosevelt Avenue continue to look like nothing more than another busy neighborhood street. People walk around under the subway tracks every night. They grab food and they catch trains, they go home. And almost nobody thinks about the fact that the same subway system they rely on every day was once the focus of a major terrorism investigation. That is one of the strange truths about cities. Some of the biggest dangers they face are invisible until the very last moment. They do not look dramatic and they do not look obvious. Sometimes they look like an ordinary person walking through a crowd. Someone nobody notices. Someone carrying a backpack. Or someone that just blends into the background of our everyday life. Until investigators discover the truth. And by that time, most people hear the story, it is already over. The attack never happened, and the trains kept moving, and the city kept living. But the story remains a reminder of something important. In a city this big, with this many people moving every day, you never really know what might be happening quietly behind the scenes. You never know which investigation might be unfolding somewhere, or which moment in time could have changed everything. And tonight, as the trains continue to pass above Roosevelt Avenue and thousands of people move through Queens like they always do, most of them have no idea that years ago investigators believed the subway system running through the city came dangerously close to becoming the target of something catastrophic. This is the kind of story New York almost forgets, but never completely. But the strangest part of the story did not come from the arrest. It came later, when investigators started reconstructing how close the plan actually came to happening. Because according to prosecutors, Zazi had not just been thinking about the attack, he already started building the explosives inside a hotel room, using chemicals he had purchased across several stores. The explosive material he was trying to produce was something called TATP. If that name sounds familiar, it is because it has been used in several major terrorist attacks around the world. Investigators know this substance very well, not because it's the most powerful explosive, but because it's incredibly unstable. It can explode from heat, from friction, even from being moved too quickly. Which means someone trying to build inside a normal room is essentially playing with a bomb that could go off at any moment. Imagine that. A hotel room somewhere in America. A man quietly mixing chemicals, trying to build an explosive powerful enough to kill dozens of people. Nobody around him realizing what was happening. That detail still sends chills through investigators who work the case. Because if the mixture had detonated accidentally, the story might have ended very differently. But there's another detail most people never hear about. The attack was not supposed to happen randomly. Prosecutors later said that Zazi had been studying New York subway maps, looking at routes, studying rush hour patterns, and trying to understand where trains were most crowded. where an explosion would cause the most panic. The goal was not just destruction, it was fear. Because the subway system is the bloodstream of New York. Disrupted, and the entire city feels it. Now imagine millions of people waking up one morning, heading to work, grabbing coffee, checking their phones, completely unaware that someone somewhere might be planning to turn the daily commute into a nightmare. That was the reality investigators believed they were facing in 2009. And here's the part that makes the story even more unsettling. Zazie was not acting entirely alone. During the investigation, authorities uncovered evidence that other individuals had helped him. Someone had assisted with the planning. Someone had helped cover things up. Which meant the investigators suddenly expanded beyond one suspect. Federal agents had to figure out who else knew about the plan, who else might be involved, and whether there were other threats still out there. That kind of uncertainty is something that most people never see, because by the time the public hear about the cases, the danger is already past. The arrests have been made and the headline appear and life goes on. But during those few weeks in 2009, investigators were facing a terrifying possibility that a train attacker with explosive might already be prepping to strike New York, and that the clock was ticking. In the end, the attack never happened, and the plot collapsed. The suspect pleaded guilty, and the city moved on. But a story like this leaves behind a strange feeling. And something reminds us how thin the line can be between ordinary life and something catastrophic. Most people have no idea that years ago the same subway system passing above Roosevelt Avenue was once the focus of a plot. New York has a strange way of absorbing moments like that. The trains always keep running, and the crowds keep moving. And eventually the story fades into the background. Until one night you are walking down a street like this, and you hear the trains, and you look at the people around you, and you realize something unsettling. History took almost a different turn here. And the only reason we are able to walk these streets normally tonight is because someone somewhere discovered the truth just in time.